Welcome to episode 127 of the XS Noize Podcast. I'm Mark Millar. Thanks for listening. In this episode, I speak to Snow Patrol guitarist Nathan Connolly about his debut solo album, The Strange Order of Things. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to Franco-British pianist and composer Ailbhe. So check it out, and if you like the podcast, please subscribe on your favourite listening platform, give us a rating, and leave a comment. Before we begin, here's Daniel Lynch with what's been happening on XS Noize this week.
In the reviews section, Niall Donnelly says Metallica's new album 72 Seasons is relentless. Rather than trying to rediscover the magic of their first 5 albums, Niall says the band is at peace with what they are now, and 72 Seasons has all the ingredients of a great album. 4 out of 5. Ian Byrne has been listening to Human Algebra from The Selector. It's the ska legend's 16th album and shows they're still able to produce original music of quality and relevance. Rebecca Haslam has been speaking to actress and singer-songwriter Colin Crusoe about her new single Nothing, and there's new music on the site from Christine and the Queens, Sophie Ellis-Bextor, and tour dates from Nathan Connolly, Greta Van Fleet and Freya Ridings. All the details are at xsnoize.com.
Nathan Connolly has been the guitarist with acclaimed Northern Irish rock band Snow Patrol since 2002. Nathan began working on his debut solo album with producer Rocky Riley in Belfast in 2017. A lockdown-imposed hiatus from Snow Patrol touring allowed him to finish the project in early 2021. The Strange Order of Things features vocals from Simon Neil of Biffy, Clyro and Irish artist Ailbhe Reddy. In this interview, Nathan talks about writing and recording the album, upcoming solo live shows, what's next for Snow Patrol, and lots more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the XS Noize Podcast with Nathan Connolly. So hi Nathan, welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
Great to have you. Going back to the start, can you remember the first band or artist that made you pay attention to music?
Oh yeah, I mean there were so many. I think my earliest memories is actually growing up, driving with my dad in the car, and he would be listening to Tom Petty, Bruce Springsteen, Rolling Stones were the main kind of Southside Johnny and the Ashby Dukes, all that kind of world. That was my kind of early education before I started sort of wanting to kind of recognize bands that I was like, oh, you know, when you hit that age, you're like, oh, those bands weren't cool for a little bit. I adore them all still, but it's I think the first sort of leap out of my dad's record collection that made me go, wow, I want to do that was Appetite for Destruction. That was the first record I ever bought of my own. You know, before I was listening to my dad's and putting them on, and to be fair, like Tom Petty, out of his records, I would put on a lot, but and he bought me like ZZ Top Eliminator. But the first record I bought myself was Guns N' Roses. And I think that was the kind of, you know, the image of Slash. And it was just like, well, who wouldn't want to do that? You know, I was like 10 or something. So
that's a great album. It still stands up today.
It really does. I was listening to it very recently, actually. And, you know, sometimes I haven't listened to it in years and then I go back to it. But yeah, it's still pretty gritty and dirty and it's pretty exciting, you know. I was actually, I went to see it last year, the year before. I went to see Thor, you know, the latest Thor movie. And It was just Guns N' Roses throughout of it. And I had, you know, the soundtrack, and I hadn't listened to it in ages. I was like, in the cinema, just like, my God, this sounds thrilling, you know? But yeah.
Was listening to Guns N' Roses and watching Slash and the videos and stuff, is that what inspired you to pick up a guitar?
Partly, yeah. I think it you know, I was really young. And I think what it served as was like a launching point, though. You know, I mean, that record was 87. I didn't think I bought it until sort of 90, or you know, and that was they were the sort of, then it was, you know, alongside things like AC/DC and, you know, the classic rock that then led to, you know, then a few years later, you know, Nirvana, Pixies, and then beyond. I mean, the other band obviously were U2, who were kind of ever present, I suppose. Certainly, as you know, growing up in Ireland, you know, it was like they were, but it was, you know, like at 93, pretty great year of a little section 93, and some of those records, you know, like Pearl Jam, the Verses is still, I think, holds up like that record does. Appetite, I mean, and it's, yeah, there was all those bands. I was listening to them all at once, and then got into more bands like Three Colours Red, Baby Chaos, you know, the kind of new British scene at that stage, the late 90s. So yeah, but it's all connected, and it's, you know, bands talking about their favorite bands, then you go, oh, let's check that out, you know. And then also, like, at that point, just word of mouth was huge. When I was growing up, you know, we were just swapping tapes and, you know, mixtapes and tapes. What are they?
Yeah.
So, you know, I think there was, you know, I think, you know, some of my favorite records still to this day were ones that, you know, felt like you'd discovered them, you know, or your mate said, you've got to hear this, you know.
Well, you mentioned U2. Uptown Baby is my favorite album of all time. Right.
Well, I mean, it's an absolutely stunning record, and I think, you know, it's been well documented, the kind of shift. But yes, Acton and Zero Bob certainly would have been my kind of, you know, I obviously knew of U2 and knew the songs, but that was kind of, I was just old enough to kind of start sort of getting fanatical about bands and you know, becoming sort of, I was at one point obsessed with Clash, you know, and I think, you know, they were, I think part of that was also, you know, they just looked like a band more than lots of bands did, you know, and then going back. So I don't know, there was a lot of jumping forward and then going back into other bands and discovering things like the Psychedelic Furs was like, wow, what is this? And, yeah, so there was a lot, those kind of early years, I guess, started with classical rock, but, I know you just mentioned before the interview that, you were speaking to Andy, but Troublegum and, you know, Nurse and those Therapy records were very, very influential records. The first band I ever seen live was Therapy. And 95, I think, 95, 96, in the Ulster Hall, which was my first gig. And, and I've met Andy a few times over the years, and I've mentioned that. I got to play with him at one stage. And, so yeah, even those records and Ash were just coming up at the same time. So there was lots of stuff that was just, you know, I know that at the time a lot of bands didn't come to Belfast or to Northern Ireland, but that was live. But I didn't feel any lack of wealth of being given, or locally as well. You know, hearing music, and I think that was partly, again, as I said, just down to my group of friends.
You've just released your debut solo album, The Strange Order of Things. It's fantastic. How does it feel that it's actually out in the world? Because I know it took a long time. You started maybe recording around about 2017. Would that be correct?
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that it's out is, I was asked the other day, what does success mean for it? At this stage, it was getting it out. The fact that it's out, that's great. I was like, thanks for that. So yeah, getting it out and getting to that point was something, because I've been sitting on it for a year as well now.
Right.
For various reasons, logistical, you know, nothing exciting in that sense, but it, so yeah, I've had time to kind of sit with it, and maybe some points impatiently going, I just want it out, but, you know, trying to hold on to it. It'll come out when it's the right time. But yeah, I'm glad it's out. And yeah, you know, the process of it was, you know, there was maybe, like, I think it was 2019 or part of 18 and 19, I was in tour with Snow Patrol, so I just didn't even touch the record. But I had time to kind of then come back and go, wow, that needs to change. Or, you know, no one was waiting on a Nathan Connolly solo record, so there wasn't any pressure involved in it. So I could just, you know, it was a labor of love, really, and I could just take my time and change things and come back to it. There is a point where you have to stop doing that, you know, because you could tinker all the time with it. But it's, yeah, it feels great. I'm just glad it's out. I mean, I'm still trying to just enjoy that it's out and not think about what's coming for it. And playing it live is certainly something I'm concentrating on at the minute. That's the big thing. You know, I want to definitely do shows, which is great because I'm doing 5 shows. And, you know, if more happen, that would be great. But at this stage, just, as you said, getting it out and doing some shows with it is the big thing.
Well, you previously fronted Little Matador. So why did you decide to put this collection of songs out under your own name?
It's a good question. I've been talking about a solo record for a long time. You know, I think I'd talked about it 10 years ago. I was like, I'd like to do one. It was born at that stage out of just maybe, let's see if I can do one, or let's do a record. Let's see if I can do as much of it as I can myself was one of that idea didn't linger, but it was the initial thought about it, just to see if I can do this, how much I can do it myself. And I wrote obviously the majority of it, but there was lots of things I realized that I'm not, a drummer being one. You know, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a drummer. And then I think, you know, for being in bands so long, you know, there's a point where I was looking around the room and there was no one there to collaborate with, you know, like to bounce ideas off, to get inspired by something they're doing. So I think maybe, you know, being in a band for over 20 years, for, you know, even my first band's 25 years, being in bands, there's something that was just in the DNA of me of working that way. So that's when I started asking the people like Dave and Herb, and then eventually Simon and Ailbhe to get involved. But I think Little Matador was a personal record, of course, but I think it's easier to hide behind a moniker or being part of a band. Where when you announce it as solo, I think it's much more sort of direct. This is what it is. So, but I think the themes in this record are broader and are a little wider than the Little Matador record, which was, you know, about a specific time, and I was a little angrier. This just felt more me than the band, but as I said, I ended up doing a lot of collaboration on it anyway. But it is very much a solo record, and you know, I don't know whether it means I'll do another one or it could be a different project again. I don't know when the time comes, but maybe it'll open a door for me to do that. You know,
are you comfortable being the front man?
With a guitar, I am more comfortable being it than without one. You know, I think I've got used to that shield, you know, and it acts very much like a shield, I think, especially when it comes to maybe not the singing itself, but just with the solo stuff, with the lyrics and the words, which is something I don't do often. You know, it's only when I step outside Patrol that I do that. So it seems a bit more personal. So there's that little element that, you know, I never had an ambition to be a frontman. That was never the thing. It was always be the guitar player. As we just said at the start, you know, it was like, that guy looks like a fun job. But you know, when you're writing those words, it just feels right for me to sing them. So unless, you know, there's obviously some part of me in there that maybe just wants to, sure, I'll give it a go. You know, because I wouldn't be doing it otherwise. So, but I don't envy it, and certainly in the level, you know, like Gary is a great frontman, and obviously those skills hone over years, and depends on the kind of show and things like that. But it's, you know, I still, you know, probably think myself as a guitar player, you know. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting as it's nerve-wracking.
And when you set out to write the album, you decided, right, I'm going to write an album. Did you sit down and think, right, this is the way I want it to sound, this is the sort of stuff I wanted, the sort of songs I want to write about, or did it just all come naturally?
Most of it naturally. I mean, it always starts with the music, the melody, you know, or a riff or chord sequence. It usually just starts from messing around at home, or, you know, in a sound check somewhere, like, oh, that's good, and or, you know, you think it's good and sometimes it's not, but yeah, it usually starts with that, and then try to just let stuff, you know. With Matador, it was very much about, okay, I want to make a rock record, and I want to, you know, so we got, you know, there was a little more consideration and like, and thought going into, well, I want to write some riffs, and, you know, so there was a bit more, there was, when I say a clearer picture, there was purpose to it in that sense, where with this, I was just letting stuff come up and let it come out, and not trying to edit it too much, you know, oh, this needs to be more ambient, or this. I was just trying to be without sounding mystical about it, just where the song's leading me, and I think, with that, I think references will come out, and of course, parts of it will be like Patrol. I've been in that band 20 years more. That again is part of DNA. So I was just trying not to fight against any of those things and just let it happen.
I love the title, The Strange Order of Things. Now I know there's a book called The Strange Order of Things. Where did you get it from, and what does it mean to you?
I actually bought the book. I lived between Belfast and London, and I was bought it in a bookshop in Primrose Hill. I was reading certain books like that, and at times there was another one, The Vital Question, which the partner Sarah had bought me, and all in that world, and as I was reading it, there's much grander themes that they're talking about in those books than I am, but they're talking about much deeper things, but it was kind of coincided with, becoming a dad, mortality, all the kind of interest in the things that are making us human and that we struggle with, all those things. As I say, those books are much more maybe about cultures and societies, but there's elements of them ring true, of course, and it seems to the title just sort of connected with what I felt I was experiencing and how things add up and line up. And it also just sounded better than me trying to make sense of everything. The Strange Order of Things is much better. But it did encapsulate. I mean, it was a lyric that I ended up, I stole the title for a lyric because it was, it felt very fitting to that song. And then it just, I just thought it made a great title and sort of encapsulated the record.
Yeah, it does. The album was recorded in Belfast and produced by Rocky O'Reilly, who's a legend in the local music scene. What did Rocky bring to the recording?
Oh, so many things, so many great things, not just musical, but his attitude, his belief, his patience was a big one. And knowledge, like we developed the shorthand fairly quickly, and I know I knew Rocky, we hadn't worked together before, and we just seemed to understand what we were trying to achieve. So we were free. He was great about exploration. When I wasn't sure where certain songs might be going, there was a lot of time to, and again, I understand that's a luxury. For a lot of people don't have in a studio, but he was really, into that, supportive of that, but also focused on it rather than, sometimes me meandering and getting lost in it and going, oh, wow, this sounds really cool. It's like, but does it serve the song, Mm-hmm. So, and it was great working with him, in that aspect, but as I said, also just, his sort of wide scope on music and his love of different genre was all really, really essential, I think, to making it, certainly on the side of when it came to lyric writing, he was very, very supportive, and I was bouncing a lot of stuff off. Does this, here's what I'm trying to say. Is it doing that thing? Is it giving that impression? So yeah, he was great. We had a ball making it, a lot of fun making it, and yeah, it felt very relaxed, even in those more sort of stressful moments you can have in the studio. I've had a lot more stressful moments in different studios than it did with Rocky, so that was
sure. There's so many great songs on the album, Nathan. Let's talk about some of them. The album kicks off with Ghost, a duet with Ailbhe Reddy. It's a great way to start the album. Did you have Ailbhe in mind when you were writing the songs? Or the song?
Initially, no, I didn't. I'd always kind of heard that as a duet. The whole time it was happening, I was like, I feel like there's a duet in this, but I kind of maybe didn't even say it for a while. But I was listening to the song. I was struggling with the song a little. It just wasn't exciting me. It was pretty much the same. There was a guitar solo in it at one point. And it was actually, out of all the songs on the record, it was the one that I kind of just kept changing and struggling with. And I think partly I just really enjoyed the riff. I think partly it was the oldest song that I had sort of kicking around and just kept going back to that riff, but I couldn't make it work. And maybe I was just a bit sort of tongue-tied on it. I was listening to Ailbhe's debut record at the time, and the song Between Your Teeth. I just loved it. But her voice, I was like, that's it. That's what I was sort of hearing in my head. And it's lovely when those kind of moments of serendipity happen, when you're like, oh, that's it. So I reached out to her, and thankfully she said yes. And to be honest, once she solidified the track for me, she finished it. She had that sparkle on it, that just, I ended up taking the lower register and just let her. I kept turning me down. At one point, Rocky was like, "Well, you're going to turn yourself off." I was like, "Let's try it." Which actually, we did a version with it with just Ailbhe, but I was, everyone was like, "Can you do that when it's a solo record?" I was like, "I can do what I want," but it did work as a duet, and I had a little short list of voices and other people I was maybe considering and was maybe going to ask, but Ailbhe she just completely just made that song something that I maybe and maybe wrongly would have maybe not put on the record.
Well, I'm glad you did, because it's a great track. I love the soundscape sort of ambient interlude, and then the riff just kicks back in.
Great, yeah, well,
absolutely amazing. And I was just listening to headphones, just didn't expect that, especially for an opening track.
Yeah, well, Ailbhe. I'd done the lyrics with it, but I'd said, like, just do your thing with it, have fun. And she did a little on a slightly different version. She'd added, these lovely sort of ethereal vocals along with it. And that section, as I said, was originally a guitar solo. But she, as much as I know she didn't help write the track, she certainly influenced it and changed it. And a lot of that section you're talking about stemmed from these vocals that she kind of added, and then we leaned into that kind of ambient thing a little more. Yeah, so she was, very important to that track.
Yeah, it's great, and that's what I love throughout the whole album. There's lovely sounds, textures, and soundscapes, throughout, and it's great when you're listening on headphones. The first release from the album was Fires, which featured the vocals from Simon of Biffy. When did you first meet, and how did he get involved with the track?
Well, I met Simon. It could have been before this, but I know that the first time, I think, and again, it might not have been the first time, we played Snow Patrol and Biffy played MTV Gonzo's and Low Show 2003. Was the first time properly maybe we'd met. But then, being in Glasgow and being around the festival scene, we'd crossed paths, and over the years, the same thing. And ended up in the same flights, the festivals, all those things, backstage, bars, and then a little Malboro would go on to support Biffy at one stage. So, just developed a friendship over the years. And we'd often said, maybe after a beer or two, or, hanging around, just, we should do something someday, born over, as you said, born over love of certain albums. And, again, I was kind of with Fires, was written with Dave McGee, from a riff he had that I was like, what the hell is that? Can we use it? We were actually in the studio working on other stuff, and I really enjoyed it. And then he'd sent it, and we started working it into the song. I had ideas for it. I just honestly didn't think they were very good. Some of them were shocking. Because I think maybe there was a pressure on the track, because I really enjoyed the music and that kind of shoegaze feel to it. And I just, I was working on the rest of the record, and I was struggling to find my way into it. And to borrow this title that I had, and I thought about sending it again to a few people, and I'd sent Simon a couple of songs just to see if he wanted to play guitar, so just to see if he wanted to be involved in the record. But Fires had nothing on it, and I said, if you want to sing. So I sent him 2 or 3 songs, and he came back saying he really loved Fires. And I was like, okay. I said, I have nothing for it. I have nothing good for it. And I just told him to go for his life, which he did. And again, part of the thrill of collaboration and part of the nervous excitement you get is because you have no idea where someone's coming at it from. You have an inkling that, I'm a fan of Biffy, and Simon's got his own unique style, and as they do. So you're hoping that that's coming to it, but he killed it, and just he just sent over all these vocals, and we didn't even send anything back to him. We didn't have to redo anything. We just nailed it, and that was an exciting day for me and Rocky in the studio to go. We listened to it and kind of looked at each other, and that kind of, we both think it's great, but please, other one think it's great, and we did, and so finally we got to do something together, and maybe someday we'll do more, but it's again something that was just kind of I don't know, serendipity, lucky accidents, whatever you want to call it, that we finally get to do it. So yeah, great, and just grateful that they both, Ailbhe and Simon, brought something really special.
But it's good as well that you've given the tracks to them and give them the freedom to do what they want, rather than dictating, saying, "All right, I want it to sound like this, or I want you to do this here," and you just let them go with the flow. Yeah,
well, initially I think that's the way to go. There are times when you're looking for something specific, but even within that, I think it's like, look, I'm looking for something in this avenue. I think for me, anyway, that's easier to say when it's maybe instrumentation, but when you're dealing with someone's vocals, I think it's nice to give them that. And if they're playing guitar or synth or bass or whatever it is, to give them that feeling, because they're going, again, like Dave and Herb, I invited them up to play and stuff, just to have personality in it, and take a song, maybe, just a bass guitar or bass line can just shift the song into something magnificent, like Herb did. So I think if there's a risk in that, it completely outweighs just sort of saying, right, just play what I'm. Because I think that's as I said, that I was trying to see how much I could do. Obviously, I had a vision for it, but that vision was kind of more knowing what I didn't want than what it is sometimes. And as I said earlier, letting it be. But yeah, I mean, everybody that played on it, they're all stunning. They're incredible people. Lindley playing trumpet was a really fun day in the studio. He's a proper musician. That's a man that's at the top of his game. So he did like 4 takes, and they were all magnificent. So I was like, which one do we use? So we had to just go with how it was feeling, and yeah, it was just great to have all those people involved.
And what track was that? Was that This Is All That I Don't Face?
Yes, yeah.
Right, I thought it was a saxophone.
Yeah, it's a trumpet. It's a trumpet. Yeah. Well, yeah, but interestingly though, it does feel like he's playing it like a saxophone. It's got that kind of feel, But yeah, that was a really fun day.
Yeah, because I was going to say, even trumpets, you very rarely hear them, and so not in modern music anyway. And it was a nice surprise when I was listening to it, and hearing
I don't
that.
know why I decided to go for the trumpet. I heard some sort of horn in there, and obviously, being in Belfast, I was like, well, there's really one man to be calling. And I don't know that. I mean, there was a reference in my head for that song, which maybe I shouldn't say, but because it maybe doesn't sound like that at all. But New York Minute, Don Henley was in my head when I was listening to that song, and it weirdly made me think of late night jazz as well. So I was going, not that the song sounds like that, but there was a feeling, or it was reminding me of something. Maybe it was New York and jazz, I don't know. So I was like, yeah, I really feel that there's a horn part in there, something, and then Lee just aced it.
Yeah, and that's what's great about it as well, because you don't expect it to come in.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's funny because you're saying you don't expect certain things. Because I'm used to it, then you forget that these moments are maybe surprises, or which is great if that's how they're coming across to it. So,
although I thought it was a saxophone, but it was like,
well, look, as long as it was giving the feeling, I think it's there's a lot of things like that. Actually, some things are guitars that sound like synths, some synths sound like guitars.
Yeah,
it's just it was a lot of it was just with Rocky just going, what does it feel? This sounds great. We threw a lot of certain songs with that kind of stuff, and then we tried to edit out what was least important and what was more important. And anyway, yeah, he's great at that stuff too. So that was a nice sort of adventure into that kind of sonic world, you know.
Well, I've been listening to the album a lot, and I think today my favourite song is Love Like Wildfire. You know, it starts with a gentle acoustic guitar, and then it just explodes. You know, it's an amazing track, and I think it's probably, in my opinion, your most sort of Snow Patrol track on the album.
Yeah, I would agree. I think a few people have said that to me, a few friends. One friend of mine actually said, "Is you know, should you just not use that for Snow Patrol?" I was like, "Well, that's like what?" But yeah, no, it probably is the most sort of similar. And I wrote that. So I wrote 2 songs with Dave on the record, and that was one of them. It initially started out as this kind of building thing, and then I got the riff at the end. And I was sitting in with the studio one day, just again, kind of just something wasn't connecting with it, and there was this kind of long lead up to this explosion at the end, and I was like, why don't we just make that the chorus? Let's just cut. You know, we got pretty ruthless at cutting songs from this length to this length, and just getting to the point, you know. And then once we'd done that, it just transformed. So yeah, it probably is the most kind of similar. But you know, as I said, it's you know, I wasn't trying to hide those things. You know, I get that lots of times when you're going out on your own and trying to make different records, that it is, of course, it's great to do different things. You know, I don't know, maybe I would have made a, you know, jazz metal record or something. I don't know, but that's, you know, it felt that's, you know, and there's plenty of merit in exploring those things, and I kind of did with Matador, but that's not what I felt this should be, you know. So I guess there's going to be similarities to that, which either some people will love, and I'm sure there's plenty of people will hate it. But
no, I love that. I definitely did love that. What did your Snow Patrol bandmates think of the album? Was it supportive?
100%. Yeah, they've been great. Yeah, I mean, you know, there was various times at various stages I let them hear certain pieces and parts of what I was doing, but you know, and I sent them towards the end, you know, just to see what they thought, and if you know, I wasn't recording something that they were like, I'd stick that in the basement. Yeah, you know, leave that one alone. But no, I mean, they were great. You know, they always are. I mean, we all do different stuff. We all have various projects that we do outside Snow Patrol. So Gary heard probably a little more, but I put it out in his label, so he was probably needed to hear it to make sure that it was worth putting out. You know, but yeah, they're great, and they've been really, really supportive. And you know, at their side, they'll be at the shows and stuff like that. You know, I'll probably drag them up at some point as well. You know, it's like, yeah, we all are with each other. It's like if anyone wants to do something, it's like, yeah, you know. But obviously, you know, there's a logistical side of that. But you know, that's Snow Patrol generally takes priority for obvious reasons.
Well, you've announced a short UK and Ireland tour with 5 dates in mid-June, which includes Belfast Limelight. Yeah. So, how much are you looking forward to getting out there?
Yeah, can't wait. It's nervous excitement for sure, because there's, you know, okay, right, I've got to, you know, now front and center, I need to concentrate, and there'll be things that I don't usually concentrate on, and a bit more pressure. But yeah, I'm excited about it for sure. You know, we had a week's rehearsal at the end of last year, and with the guys with everyone who played in the record or the band. So yeah, really excited to get out and figure out how the hell to play it live, because as it was made in the studio, you know, we didn't write it and then go in and record. So yeah, there's a bit of figuring out to do, but that's part of the fun. Yeah, looking forward to the Limelight. Believe it or not, I've never played the Limelight. The Limelight 2, but the original Limelight, I've never actually played there, which is strange. But you know, it's a venue that I've seen so many bands, and you know, I've seen Three Colours Red there, I've seen Fugazi there, and you know, just over the years, you know, it's a special place. So I'm excited to play it.
Yeah, there's been some amazing bands there, and I suppose, but when you joined Snow Patrol, they were at a sort of playing band. Well, in fact, that's what I'm going to get to. I mean, this year, Final Straw turns 20. It's a classic album, and it's when you joined the band. What memories do you have about joining the band and recording that album?
So yeah, I moved 2000. I met the guys 2001, and went over kind of the start, and then 2002 joined officially before we went in to record Final Straw. I met the guys through my first band. We shared a tour bus on last year, in 2000, I think. And my first band split up, which Dave was in. And they were looking for a full-time guitar player. Ian Archer was playing live for them. And Wags, actually, from Happy Mondays, used to play live. And yeah, they were looking for someone permanent. So they're like, "Are you up for it?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll come over." They happened to be DJing in Belfast at the time. And they're like, "When can you come over?" I was like, "Tomorrow." Like, right. They picked me up and I moved to Glasgow. So, I came back and forth for the first few months, but yeah, when I say audition, it was just like, here's the songs we've been working on. And then, yeah, that was kind of it. We just, I think it was about a year later. I think my first show with them was August 2003, at which point we'd recorded Final Straw in London. So yeah, I remember sharing a house, the four of us. Mark was in the band at the time. And it was the first record we made with Garrett. We were halfway through. We hadn't officially signed a deal with then Black Lion. He became Fiction, which is Polydor. So there's a lot of changes going on. It was my first proper major record. And I was, 21, 22. So yeah, it was, I was excited, obviously, just to be in there and doing this. It felt, that was the first kind of moment where I felt like, okay, I'm doing this, even though that, I think partly unbeknownst to me, everyone else is going, well, this is our third chance, and if it doesn't go, it might be over. So, but I was certainly excited, and that record changed our lives, undoubtedly. I think, we go on to Eyes Open, which took us even further and even more successful, but I think Final Straw was arguably more important because it changed everything. And our lives as a band, our lives individually, being able to live, to buy, to not, at one point Gary was selling his record collection. I think that's a fairly famous story, so it changed so much for us. And, it's mad that it's 20 years. It doesn't feel like it. It really doesn't. Part of the sliding starting to go a bit grayer and stuff and going, and you see pictures back and you're like, whoa, we were babies, and you kind of thought you knew it all. I was probably a little cockier and less good. And I'm a little better now and less confident. I think that's age, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you were working at the HMV at the time, weren't you, when it happened?
I'd left about 6 months before that, roughly, or something like that. But I was a terrible employee, or someone joked recently, you were a great employee, because I just poured my wages back into records. I just bought albums. That's what I did. So, in that sense, it was a great job. Get my paycheck and just literally go back into the shop and and just spend it in vinyl or whatever new.
I can relate to that because I used to work there and I did exact same thing. I worked there in 95 when it just opened.
Wow.
Right at the start.
It was a dangerous place to work because of that, but at the same time, that's what I loved. It was like, I back in the day as a teenager, it was just walking around, Saturdays were spent just walking around Belfast, going to like Hector's house and, all those old record stores that, sadly aren't there. But yeah, it was, I had fond memories of doing that and getting to work there. Yeah, it was, as much as I was probably terrible, but at least it was buying records there.
If I wanted to make a playlist of the best Snow Patrol songs, what are the 5 songs I should have that are essential for that list?
Damn you. Personal favorites, I suppose, and some of the reasons are for playing live, but Make This Go On Forever live is definitely taken on, I think it's one of the few album tracks that has stayed since Eyes Open, part of the set, where pretty much everything now is singles, there's very few album tracks that, in set now, not a bad place to be, but Make This Go On Forever, actually, there was a B-side that a lot of hardcore fans are really into, and it's actually great. Warmer Climate, Fallen Empires, There's a great song on. It's on the end of Fallen Empires, I think. The President. It was just a song that I always thought was pretty powerful. Gary's just lyrics and vocals are just amazing in it. What's that for?
Yeah.
And I guess pick Because I Can. I wasn't in the band at the time. Olive Goes Facing the Sea was always just a song that I remember. I remember actually, it was a friend of mine, and you probably know him, Darren Smith, working at Bright Star at the time, passed the second Snow Patrol record on to me and was like, you got to hear the song. And I remember going, yeah, that's a stunning song. Yeah, I don't know. That's 5.
That'll do. That'll go on my list.
That'll probably change tomorrow, but yeah, yeah, it's funny that sometimes those songs, you go back to them, and maybe even though you've recorded them or played them, you miss them, or they don't seem as special. Certainly something like The President, or it's over time, you're like, wow, okay, there's something different in it.
Well, Snow Patrol's last album was The Brilliant Wildness. That's probably my favourite Snow Patrol album. It was in 2018. So it's been a while, and it was a while before Wildness came out. I think it was about 7 years.
That was too long, yeah.
Yeah, so what's happening?
Yeah, we're hopefully next year is the plan. We've done some recording, and we're just making sure everything's right. We're taking our time. Hopefully not the time between Wildness and Fallen Empires was too long. But I mean, I know there's COVID, which we'll not get into, but it's it's because plenty of people made albums during it. I mean, I did, but yeah, there's been some songs recorded, demoed, and yeah, really excited. But next year is the plan. So, certainly by no means does a solo record mean I'm going anywhere. But yeah. So that's
is Garrett back in the producer chair?
No. Well, we're still. There's a lot of stuff we're still figuring out, but I know at the minute. Although I know that Gary has done one song with him. They wrote a song. So I'm sure he'll be involved in some capacity, even if it ends up just that. So, yeah, this is the thing. We have a lot of sort of things spinning. So we need to kind of get our ducks in a row before we kind of start making some sort of final decisions on it,
Good.
But I'm excited about the songs, that's for sure.
Good. Can't wait to hear it. If you could go back and relive one musical moment from your career, what would it be?
There's a couple. I guess that that first sort of leap from playing to 20, 30 people before Run came out to going to 3 months later to jump into Shepherd's Bush Empire, which was 2,500 people. That was kind of a in hindsight, that was like, I think we were riding the wave at the time. I was just excited and kind of going, what? But yeah, that was that I don't know that I was present enough for that, maybe. It's hard to pick one, the award parks have always been pretty special, they're hard to, again, they're so important to us because it's home and literally Gary and Johnny's backyard, that it's, the second one in particular, we were kind of just overwhelmed by the size, 45,000 people was just insane. And again, I think, you're on stage, you're present when you're playing, you're present in your playing. But again, maybe that's the thing though, you try to take as much in and enjoy it, but that's what it is. But certainly, and there was a U2 show we played in Poland, and I know I've heard Gary mention it in an interview, so it's obviously special enough that, that was just a near religious experience. I don't know why that's so especially. But the whole stadium, the bottom half had red flags, the top had white. At one point, the whole stadium it was like, everyone got a text going, no, and it just turned into this huge Polish flag, and it was just and getting to support them anyway at that stage was a big deal, still a big deal. But it's there was something magical in the air that night for sure. and I was in the audience at that point, so I'm probably talking more about seeing the gig again than playing it. But we were, there's been a lot of moments, and I'm sure I'll get off the call and remember more. But yeah, but I guess that first leap was something special.
For us music fans, music is the soundtrack of our memories. What song or album, when you listen to it, brings back the best memories for you?
So many. I was asked there recently to do a piece for the new Q about pick a record that's special to you. And I was like, it's always like pick one, give me 5 at least. Like, oh my god. But so many records that were. I think you're right. It's absolutely soundtrack. Whether that's the soundtrack to your life, whether that's obviously breakups, the start of an era, end of an era, a specific tour, making a record, a person, a place. There's so many records to find some of those things. Mew Frangers was what I put in the piece. And then it was one of those ones when I was asked to do it, I instantly forgot about records, did the piece, came back to my record collection, which is just there, and records downstairs. Then it was like, oh, there's this, there's that. Oh, I forgot about everything. But like, I mentioned Appetite for Destruction, Pearl Jam Versus, Sugar Copper Blue was a big one for me. All the bands that I mentioned in the interview so far all had albums that were sort of pivotal, changes or stuck with me. Sun Kill Moon, Ghost of the Great Highway is a record that it reminds me of a specific time. M83, Before the Dawn Heals Us, actually reminds me of making Final Straw a lot. Mm-hmm. So many. It's a hard question, but and then you still do that now. There's records that remind me of things you were listening to during COVID when you were locked in, and all these things. And yeah, the latest record that has become kind of a soundtrack of my mornings is Parallels by Christian Loeffler. Or Loeffler, I don't know what the pronunciation is, but that's just a beautiful, beautiful record, and it's become part of my kind of go-to records. So, I know yourself. What do you have? One, or do you have? You've probably got many.
Well, there's a few. Achtung Baby, obviously, as I mentioned. That's always been there.
Achtung Baby. You know what I mean?
It's always been there. The first Stone Roses album. And I'll be honest. The last Snow Patrol album, I listened to it quite a lot. Been listening to it, since it's come out. Obviously,
while it seemed to connect for folk, it was certainly. It's hard to pick a favorite album, but it's certainly one I enjoyed of late that I really kind of lost myself in as well.
Soon, and it's a really amazing song. I remember talking to Gary about it. But the video for it.
Yeah,
you can see where I live in the background.
Right,
you can see the Kilroot chimneys.
Yeah, of course, yeah. That was a special song, and I know that was that was a huge special song for Gary, and we actually performed it once. We're talking about performances, and we played it once in the Ulster Hall, I think, on the launch, and we never played it again. Not intentionally, just but I'm sure it's a hard one for him to play. But that was a really beautiful moment, actually. Speaking of moments, for to be part of that, guy playing for his dad and being such a powerful song. I hope he did it justice. But it's hard to pick, isn't it? It's because I think it's all sorts of moods, mood dependent, there was actually Wheat, Hope and Adams reminds me of, late 90s and loving that record and just so many. Sometimes they just they can be a year snapshot that's where it takes you back to, and listen to that record and in my friend's garden, I remember, and AC/DC, If You Want Blood, always reminds me of going to my friend Brona's house. I hope she's there with Dave and her backstage, and sneaking bottles of whiskey and coke into her room and sticking that on. That's another memory. So they can be so specific, and that's what I love about records,
Mm-hmm. This is the last one, and this you have to pick something here as well. Which song or album is your guilty pleasure?
Oh, well, I remember reading Dave Grohl saying he didn't think there was such a thing as a guilty pleasure, because therefore, if you like it, you like it. But I'll try to be.
I always say, if you were playing it in a car, would you have the windows up or would you have the windows down?
Yeah, I'm really trying to think honestly. If there's something that I do that to, it'll be like. Bound to be something. I don't know. I have to think. Because the other thing about guilty pleasure is, I think we were referred to as a guilty pleasure once, and it's never a great thing to be, saying I think it's a guilty pleasure. But there's the Shania Twain song, which I'm Gonna Get You Good, is it? Which I think was produced by Mutt Lange. And that's one that went on the radio. I'm like, yeah, I like it.
Well, it's Mutt Lange, you know what I mean? AC/DC.
But I mean, I know, and I don't mean to be horrible about it, but I suppose that's one that you're waiting for maybe someone to change the radio, and I'm like, I'm just going to leave it on. No offense to Shania Twain, but it's a good song.
Yeah, a good song's a good song.
Yeah.
So that's me done. Nathan, is there anything else you would like to mention before we wrap up?
No, just excited to do the shows is the main thing, and thanks to everybody so far for being so really great response to the record. So thank you. Thanks for chatting.
Okay, well that's brilliant. Thanks very much, Nathan, and have a good day.
Thank you, mate. Have a good day.
Take it easy, mate.
See you soon.
Bye.
Cheers.